Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have with us Dr. Gregg Korbon. He is a former army veteran, and he is also an author and also a doctor, as he said. So we'll be talking about a lot of stories, a lot of story about his family, about intuitive wisdom, about a lot of spirituality and resilience, and through we'll understand everything how about grief, healing, and spiritual lessons from loss. We'll talk about all this. Welcome to the show, Dr. Gray.
Yeah, thank you, AJ. Thanks for having me.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll talk about finding hope through grief and loss, through your understanding and through going through a lot of things yourself. So we'll talk about all that. But before that, let's understand a bit about your journey, your background, your story, so that people know who they are listening to.
All right. Well, I was a typical in your head materialistic physician when I had my family. And so I had a 9-year-old son, Brian, who was extremely gifted. And right when it was time for his birthday, ninth birthday, things started getting really strange. So he told us, he became very afraid, and he told us that he didn't want to celebrate his birthday because it would bring his death closer, and he would not live to double digits, which was age 10. So, and then he became very frightened. He was afraid to go to sleep. Uh, the sleep for him was kind of like bringing death closer. And so we struggled with that. We couldn't find any reason, he would be doing that. We took him to a therapist. We couldn't find any issues. But at the same time, a lot of other strange things started happening. Like the picture that we had just framed of him started fading. And just lots of coincidences happened. And then like about 5 months later, in the spring, he came out of his depression, and then we had one thing I didn't write about in the book. My book, Beyond Reason, and the website is beyondreason.info, and there was way too much stuff for me to even describe because I couldn't understand what was going on at all at the time, and of course, I still only understand a little bit. But things like about a month before he died, all of a sudden a big Luna moth, which is a huge 10-inch moth, started tapping on his door, the glass door to his room. And I remember the full moon shining behind it, throwing shadow on the floor by his bed. Just, there was all kinds of things going on. And the universe was orchestrating this, this event, which was way beyond my understanding. And then about 2 weeks before he died, he said it was time for his party, his belated birthday party. But he wanted it to be didn't want it to be a birthday party. He wanted it to be a happy spring party with just 3 of his friends and no gifts. So so we planned the party, and he was doing these other things too, like saying it was time for him to go on a trip. And he'd put himself in a box and say he was mailing himself up to Wisconsin or Arizona. And then 2 days before he died, my wife came home and he was pulling his wagon down the driveway with his teddy bears, and he said it was time for him to go on his trip. So he got out of the car and put him on her lap and said, you have your party coming up. You can't go on your trip now. And so they talked for a while, and then she said, "Well, you've always been afraid to camp out by yourself, so why don't we pitch the tent, and that'll be your trip for today." So he thought that was a good idea. So we pitched the tent, and our dog Sasha, I've had some amazing dogs, and Sasha was an alpha female husky dog, Eskimo dog, and she was extremely courageous. And I could tell you stories about her, or about a lot of my other dogs that are pretty amazing. But she spent the night in with the tent with Brian, and then he was very proud of himself for sleeping out, and facing his fear. And then he had the party with his friends, and then he went to his room for an hour or two to get ready to go to his baseball game where he died. And I didn't realize, but he put going away sign on his door. Brian's on a trip. Don't worry about me. And during the previous weeks, he tied up all his loose ends. He'd gotten the next day was Mother's Day, and he had gotten my wife a Mother's Day present in advance, which was unusual for him. But he also got my Father's Day present, even though Father's Day was a month away. So here it is, world's greatest dad. And he made my wife buy that. And she said, it's a month away. But he said, you don't understand. You have to get it. So she did. And then he wrote some letters. And then we went to his baseball game. I took him, and he was the littlest kid on his little league baseball team. And he wasn't very good at baseball. He was brilliant and good at lots of things. But I'd encourage him to kind of round out that he would join a group sports thing. So we went to the mailbox, and he was going to mail his letters. I said, Brian, you don't understand. They don't have the stamps. They won't get there. He says, you don't understand. They will get there. So we put him in the mailbox. We went to the baseball game, and he had always been afraid of the ball. And but this time he lost all of his fear. He was charging after the hard ball and asking the coach to make him the pitcher, which was kind of ridiculous because he was like tiny, compared to all the other kids and everything. And then his first up at bat, he got up in the batter's box, and he was so little he got to walk to first place. The next boy hit a triple, and on the way there, he said he wanted to score a run more than anything. That's it. So he ran around the bases, scored a run. We were standing up and cheering, giving him high fives. He went to his dugout, and everybody gave him high fives, and then he collapsed, and his heart stopped. So I'm an anesthesiologist, and that's what we do. So I resuscitated him when he was a baby because he had a heart defect that got corrected. He was otherwise healthy. And and then I thought he should have an arrhythmia. We should be able to get him back because the rescue squad was right across the street. They showed up within a minute, and we did all the right things. But something told me he wasn't coming back. And then all this paranormal stuff started happening that day. If you'd like, I can tell you a little bit about that. And then we'll talk about some of the things that happened afterwards. But we took him to put him in the ambulance, tried to shock him, took him to the emergency room where I used to work, and then couldn't bring him back. And then I went to the baseball field about an hour later to get my car. I didn't want to leave it alone there for the night, and it was like the most beautiful spring day I had ever seen. It was like the honeysuckle was out early. The air was sweet with honeysuckle, and the sky was just absolutely beautiful. And went back to the picnic area where the baseball field was, and there were picnics and people playing music. It was very joyful. And I reached up to wipe a tear from my eye, and the sour smell of the vomit from Brian. When you shock people, they usually vomit. They don't show that on TV. So blended with the sweet honeysuckle. And all of a sudden, my vision got clearer than I'd ever been before. The bright colors got brighter, sounds got clearer, and I was in another state of consciousness. And I knew that Brian had finished his work here, and that the only unfinished work was mine. He died a happy boy, and if I could bring him back, it would be for me, not for him. And then we went home. A lot of people came to to comfort us. And then after we were home for about an hour, we saw Brian sign. Brian's on a trip. Don't worry about me. And then later that night, Brian had a younger sister who was 7, who was in the first wave of autism. She's high functioning autism and very sweet, which we're very blessed. But I tried to explain to her that Brian had died and would not be coming home. And I wasn't religious, and this was not an easy task for me. So I said, Brian's not coming home. He's, and she said, he on a trip? And I said, no, Brian's up in heaven. Um, and we won't be seeing him anymore. And then she looked up in the ceiling and she got this wonderful smile on her face. And she said, oh, Brian see light. And I wondered, what could she see? She said, and then all of a sudden I could see this river of energy waves carrying us along that I knew had always been there, but I could never see it before. I knew Brian was still part of it. And that was part of my journey, carrying me off into trying to understand what had happened with Brian's love as my guide. And just all this incredible stuff happened afterwards. So I'm no longer a materialist.
Absolutely. So, who do you think Brian was, Greg? Who was he?
Great question. Okay. I took a lesson on how to be a podcaster. The one thing you're never supposed to say, according to the one person, is great question. So I just broke the rule. So Brian was a gift. He wrote beautiful poetry that I couldn't, he told great stories. He was a wonderful entertainer. He'd get up on the stage, he'd do a dance. We were at a summer camp, and it was a talent show. So he went up and he demonstrated some karate moves. But he was creating this incredibly beautiful dance we hadn't seen before. And afterwards, all the kids gave him a standing ovation. Brian, 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 because it was a gift. So, so a gift for which he kind of gave me a new life. And that's why I like to share his story so that other people, can love him. And if you love him, he is a very high level being. And it just naturally, it's like, have you ever been in the room with a great master where, things just happen? You just feel you are transformed by the love, the resonance that this person is putting out. So Brian was like a special gift that I wrote the book about so that people could learn about him.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Dr. Greg. We'll come to the book also. First, I want to understand who was Brian beyond being your son? Did you perceive that time? How do you see as that part that is beyond being your son?
Let's see. Well, once you get beyond the human bubble, the limited consciousness bubble that we create so that we can have a physical reality, it all gets very dreamlike and fuzzy. And then after a while, you go and it loses all form. Um, so at the dream level, I had, I had the dream experiences. I went to this a support group called Compassionate Friends, which is a support group for parents that have lost their children. And then I found out we all had similar dreams. There were three basic dreams. And I never saw anybody write about it. So I put it in my book. And the first were the pain dreams. And like when I was resuscitating Brian, I shut off all my emotions like a good doctor, like I had been trained to. But over the next week, I just would go back, and feel all the pain and all the helplessness. And I realized that the pain is absolutely essential for the healing process. That's the portal. Pain reveals what needs to be healed. And then we had the other next dream was the I'm okay dream. And my it was Christmas Eve. We were really sad. It was our first Christmas without Brian, and we went up to meet my in-laws at a hotel. And then at 2 o'clock in the morning, we had my daughter in one room, us, me and my wife, and my in-laws in the other one. And all the women all had the same dream of Brian, where he came. He was older, he was happy, and he was telling them he was okay. We didn't have to worry about him. And so, I woke up. My wife told me about it. Everybody woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and then the next morning they shared the dream. So I had mine later of that. And then the last one in the dream world was the goodbye dream. And that's where I went to the dream world specifically to see him um, at the Monroe Institute. I learned, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but all of these great teachers showed up right in my backyard. It was really amazing. Like I live in Charlottesville, Virginia. Okay. So the birthplace of the country was Charlottesville, Virginia. The Declaration of Independence came from here, Bill of Rights, Constitution, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe. The highest consciousness that it had been written into a government at the time, and still has not been matched, as far as the execution of it. And then the first books about out of body experience were written here by Robert Monroe. The first books about near death experience, Raymond Moody, life after death and stuff like that, came from Charlottesville. The entire Western world, all of the literature, remote viewing, uh, remote viewer 001, Joe McMonagle, who's a friend of mine, Charlottesville, reincarnation, right up your field. Ian Stevenson used to go and research all the time over in India because that's where a lot of the really good reincarnation stories where he could prove, that. So that was here, Charlottesville. The fellow who became my mentor, Joseph Chilton Pierce, who wrote the book Magical Child, and he used to send summers in an ashram in India, and he had this incredible experiences. And he would travel around the world and meet these super magical children, the most gifted children in the world. And so he would tell me his stories, which were unmatched. He never wrote the stuff down. So I'm very fortunate that he taught me about that. And if there's any one person on the planet that could help explain a magical child like Brian, it was Joe Pierce. And he was like a fountain. So I was very fortunate. So that's kind of like some of the magic that opened up after during the grieving process.
Absolutely. Let me understand it a bit. We'll come to the book also. But one thing, we all come from somewhere. We all go somewhere. But not everyone comes and has the understanding of what is going to happen in some time. Said around when he was 9 years old, he started. And though he was afraid, he was also planning for it, almost
Yes.
like, he was following a calendar.
Yes.
So that is where I want to understand from you about your understanding. Where did he come from? Did he come from another place that we don't all come from? Because he knew about things about himself and prepared, if, even if afraid, he still prepared for what he knew. We all know that that moment in our time, it always come, but we are never prepared. We never put our house in order. We never put our things in order. And we live a life of regret. Here was a difference. That is where again my question is: where do you think Brian came from? Something different, somewhere, someplace different than where we have all come from?
Oh, I think um, I can tell you we all come from the same place. And you've heard all the world is a stage. So now you're hearing it's a simulation. All these scientists, string theory scientists are saying in our mathematics of the universe, of our reality, are signs of a simulation. Okay. But Shakespeare, said all the world's a stage. Same thing. How do you create a stage? All right. You have to create what do you need for a story? You need limited awareness. You can't know the ending of the story. You have to have the arrow of time. You have to have a first act, a second act, and a third act. Um, and we all have to be incomplete. In the first act, you're incomplete, and all of your incompleteness gets thrown in your face. In the second act, all of these new things show up, turn your world upside down. And in the third act, it seems impossible. Okay. So, like in Star Wars, his computer, all of his friends are getting shot. His computer is not up to the task. And so you reach out. So, his father figure was Obi-Wan. So, in the moment where he's had this great journey, it seems hopeless. His materialistic understanding no longer works. And then what shows up is something beyond his limited understanding, beyond reason. Obi-Wan tells him to use the Force, turn off his computer, stop thinking. And then all of a sudden it works, and he's now a new person. So in order to have that stage, you have to have limited awareness. Now, there's lots of creation stories that kind of set the stage for that. Now, I live in the West, so that's the Garden of Eden, and there's aspects of that people don't realize. So the creation of our reality starts when Eve defies God. Okay, so she is no longer in harmony with God. She's no longer resonating. And then she takes a bite of the fruit of good and evil. And that people don't realize is so important. She's taking a bite. The serpent, how does he eat? He eats everything whole. All right. So you're taking a bite of knowledge. So now you're creating a duality. And then you chew it up in little pieces and you swallow them one at a time. So as you create one duality after another, you need some place to put all the things that you can no longer see. So you have to create space. Okay. And then you have to create time to put all of these different parts. All right. And that's part of what you need to be, have a good story. And so set the stage. And then now you go into the dream world. There's space, no, not really time. There's sequencing. You can tell a story in a dream, but there's no real time that you don't feel. And then you go into the next layer where there's even more separation, and then you get physical reality. So in order for us to be heroes in our own story, we have to maintain this bubble of limited awareness. Okay. And so Brian was ready to leave that and to teach us. So after he died, in my dreams, I would get a dream of something that happened the next day or something I would see. Or as I started developing more paranormal abilities, I discovered that they were never to be used for power, just for healing. So I went to a workshop on controlling things with my mind at the Monroe Institute, MC squared. And they were all gamblers. And I was, and they were all wanted to make money. And this for me and my spiritual pursuit was something new. I mean, the people I knew were always trying to just, heal and learn about themselves. But this was a different group. They were very talented psychically. So, to give you an example, so we were guessing cards and we had half a deck. And he said, there are no jokers in the deck. So he said, okay, we were supposed to guess the card. 3 people said black joker. Open a card. He said, oh, I forgot. I meant to take this one out too. I forgot, that's the kind of talent we were dealing with. And so I didn't want to, I've never liked gambling. So I said, okay, roulette is supposed to be the best odds. So I'll guess if my right foot tingles, it'll be a red. And if it's left, it'll be black. And so I guessed the card. So I got 23 out of 26 correct, which, in a scientific experiment would be, huge. Odds against that's probably 1 in a trillion or. So, but I noticed, and my wife, we were on a cruise and she was playing roulette and I was watching and I was trying to do that and it was working, but not as well. And then she said, oh, come on, join me. So I sat next to her, I placed a bet and the ability was gone. So that was not what I was supposed to be using that for. And I've had that experience. I've had similar messages many times. So, so we all have that, but to maintain our ability to be the hero in our story, we give that up. And we can't know what's happening next. And when you're ready to give up your identity, your character, then all the stuff comes back. When you go through on your near-death experience, you go through the vortex, the tunnel. So all this stuff comes back, all the parts come back together. You go into the dream world. You meet whatever your religious figure, you're healed. That's your level of understanding. And then after a while, that goes away. The Christ figure, the whatever figure it is, even that goes away into the nothingness when when you're healed. So that's just like, we're not supposed to know the future. And that's fine. Brian showed us it's possible. You're not stuck in your story.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's talk about your book for Understand Beyond Reason. How, what made you write this book? Why did you write this book? What is it that you wanted to say in the book, in this particular book?
I wrote it just because there were so many things that were happening that I couldn't understand. And so I just kept writing just to keep track because, as a journal and with the hope that writing it down, that I could come back to it. And then there was the issues of his death, but then part 2 is all the things that happened afterwards that I still didn't understand, and so it was kind of started as a journal for me. And then after a while, it was a gift so that other people could learn from Brian and all the things that he taught me and all the other teachers that showed up. Brian was my first teacher. And then when he was gone, the love that I felt for him, this very, high level being that, that could do things I couldn't do, showed up in other people. Other teachers showed up. and they taught me. They continued, and then and then after a while they went away. But where their source, they connected me to their source. So I didn't need them anymore. I could love them and be grateful for them, but they had given me their connection, and I wanted other people to know that.
Absolutely. In the book, I have not read the book, so I want to understand from you is that you are a doctor. You have seen things from very close quarters. Even during the Vietnam times, you were an artillery officer. You have seen things from close. Even as a doctor, you see things from close. And you see things and far to understand those things. Find when Brian first told you that he will go, how did the family look at it? Did you took it as something non-serious? Did you suspect that he's saying something? You were afraid, and looks like you played along a bit. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well,
Why did you do that?
okay, so intellectually, I thought this, this has got to be a problem. This can't be true. You can't see the future. Okay, but I could feel something going on, you know? I mean, it's like that, the Luna moth, that stuff like that was happening all the time. I mean, the universe was taking us down this path. And even at his funeral, so I was in church and I was still in shock from his death. The funeral was like, I think 2 days after he died. And my wife got up and talked about his sign and all that stuff like that. And I was like totally destroyed, melted down. All of my reason was gone. My heart was open, and I had been very closed. This opened up my heart in a way that had never happened before. And I bet even in the shock and the pain, greatest pain you could ever have, your most precious part of yourself dies in your arms. I could tell that there was something magical and beautiful in, coming from the pain or with the pain. I mean, and I just kind of sat there in the funeral wondering what was going on. I could feel it, but I couldn't understand it. It was way beyond my understanding. Now, 30 years later, I can understand some of it. Okay. But but intellectually, no. But I was in this new play where my rules didn't work anymore, you know. So, so I didn't understand it intellectually, and that's why I wrote the book. So I could understand it.
Right. So in your book, is it more of questions or is it more of answers, Dr. Gregg?
All right. Lots of questions and a few answers that hopefully lead to more questions. It's basically like a narrative where I share my experience, and it's very emotional. I write in the epilogue how every story needs an audience. I I directed a play that I talk about in the book. That's where I learned about a lot of this stuff. And the thing that motivates the method of acting, when you hear about method actors, so I got to learn a little bit about that, is their emptiness, what they're missing, what they want. Their motivation is always what they want. And then on stage, they're supposed to show that in action as clearly as they can. But everything comes down to their emptiness, what they want. That motivates everything. And so that's one of the things that I learned. All the things that I had done, all the adrenaline sports, jumped out of airplanes and flew airplanes and uh, raced race cars. Um, we were all driven by emptiness. And we always, in the race car track, always at the end, we circle it, we circle it, we circle our emptiness, and then we pull into the pit of our emptiness. So that's our motivation. And I had always it had been unconscious. So I had been driven. Now it became conscious, this emptiness, to be embraced and explored, and as a source of power, a source of, information. And of course, it's infinite. So we live in a finite universe, and our story is based on a finite reality. So at some point, you have to keep your one foot in each world, and then at some point, you give up the stage.
Absolutely. Earlier in the show, Dr. Gregg, you said that Brian's work was done, finished, and that your work was unfinished. What was the unfinished work after Brian? What is it? Okay, if you can share, and what have you finished and what is yet unfinished, or everything is finished?
Oh no, not finished at all. It's infinite. It's infinite. And every moment is unique. So we all weave, a tapestry with our moments. Um, so at first, it was become more like him. He wrote beautiful poetry. I couldn't write poetry, and that was kind of the backstory of the book. Was I'd written technical books and articles and stuff like that. I could do technical work. Back in high school, I had to write a poem, and I couldn't do it. I had to have my parents do it for me because it involved, emotion. And then writing on the book, to describe what had happened, I had to describe my emotions. So I described, the story needed, right now, you're the audience and you're listeners. So that fulfills, the story. The actors, without the audience, it's empty. They need the audience. You can feel the audience when they're there. If they're resonating with the story, you can feel it. The room, the people in the audience can feel the story, and they're all acting as one. But at first, I was the only audience for Brian for his story, and then I was writing on my yellow pad, and it would accept my story, and it would accept my tears into its layers. And then for many years, it took me 15 years to write the book. Just it was my healing path, and there was like so much pain. There's I would go on national radio telling the story. About 4 times, I got a call from a movie producer that wanted to turn the story into a movie. And the last one, and so I thought that'd be great. It's a wonderful story. And why doesn't somebody else? Why didn't any reporter investigate it? Brian left behind so many proofs. I mean, his picture was fading. I ordered a new one. A reporter could have gone to see, that I ordered a new picture 5 months before he died. There was maybe a couple hundred things that we could prove that he knew the future, but no reporter ever showed up to do it. AJ, why? So extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. We had extraordinary proof, and his therapist knew this stuff, all the stuff that we were talking about. His therapist said he loved working with Brian because Brian opened his mind and showed him things he'd never seen before, and they loved their sessions. And Brian learned about therapy from the therapist. I mean, all of the stuff. And then finally, when National Public Radio Story Corps did it, the story was a real stretch for them. And so I really applaud them for doing it. That's the first national exposure because the movies, the TV, all that made national news. Nobody talked about his premonitions. Just a boy died playing Little League. Why did they leave out the most important part? You know, these national radio, national TV, newspapers. NPR vetted the story, but nobody ever vetted it as it should have been. You know, if you're going for security clearance, for a top secret clearance, they will talk to your neighbors. They will talk to your references. They will talk to your teachers, you know, has this person ever lied, you know, stuff like that. And that's the level that I wanted the story to be vetted, but nobody would do it. So the question I ask you and your audience, why? You know, it was right there, standing right there, right for you. The fruit was right there, and nobody would pick it.
Right, right, Greg. Who is this book for that you have written, Dr. Greg? Also, have you ever thought that or felt that Brian may have also read it in some way or the other?
Yes, well, Brian kind of helped. My love for him guided it. For every word that I wrote, there was a tear. And I wrote about 10 times more than that I put in the book. It's a short book, although there's a lot of content to it. Yeah, so Brian, you know, he was there in spirit guiding me. And, you know, how do I express this? How do I do that? My heart would open. Words would flow. They'd be beautiful. I never used to be able to do that, you know, and I could feel this peace and wholeness that there's some Brian and the beauty of the words that were flowing through me, just like they used to flow through him. You know, he used to be able to just express these beautiful things. So, right. Yeah. So he was, you know, he was a big part of it.
Absolutely. People say, some people say we have this soul contract and all those things, that there is something beyond all pre-decided before. Why do you think Brian chose you as your parent?
Well, um, okay. There are two ways to look at it. One, I'm such a wonderful uh, being that this high being chose me as his father because I'm so wonderful. Or you could choose the opposite. I was so needy. I was so closed off, and I had a good mind. I'm very bright, and it was obviously getting to the point where that was not enough, and so I needed him because I was so hopeless and helpless. So I was so closed off that I couldn't see a way out. So you could say, you know, either one of those or both of them. So
And now you talked about hopelessness, helplessness. How do you see yourself now?
uh, now I see myself. Well, my identity was always being a physician, and I retired, semi-retired about 3 years ago, so I can write a new book. And my hobby has always been outdoor education challenge course. So, like teaching people how to deal with challenge, which of course Brian was the ultimate challenge course teacher. This is how you deal with it, you know, and he will help you, or whatever, you know, whenever you are ready, the teacher will appear. Just all you have to do is trust. One of the great dualities, trust and responsibility. If you trust, the universe will respond. So now my next book is going to be I think working title, Healing Your Way Home, 12 Lessons from the Challenge Course. But it's basically when you set up a challenge course, it's a stage and you're creating drama, you're creating stories, just like, you know, if you go to a regular stage. So all of the things that techniques you use on the challenge course, you can use in your life. When you hit my favorite obstacle on the challenge course is the wall. So you hit a wall and the group has to help each other get up over the wall. So there are a lot of lessons. You can't do it by yourself. What happens when you hit a wall? Have you ever hit a wall? Of course, it's built in to our life. We're always going to hit a wall. And how do you know you've hit a wall? It's unconscious. Your positive life energy hits it and comes back, fragments, and turns into negative energy. It shows up as the stages of grief for the characters in the Wizard of Oz. That's how you recognize it. Anger, depression, withdrawal into your head, becoming unemotional, or anxiety. That's the scarecrow. You recognize it, you make it conscious, and you ask for help. You expand, you expand what you're doing. So all the lessons that you do on the challenge course are exactly the same. And so, pretty much every preventable disaster is somebody or a group hits the wall and doesn't become conscious of it and does not ask for help. So, that's like one of the lessons. So that's the next book.
Absolutely, absolutely. Do you think you will ever, everybody has limited time on Earth. One day we will all, go to the other side where we came from. Do you think you will meet Brian again? Has it ever occurred to you? Do you think he will recognize you? Do you think you will recognize him?
Well, that was in the book. I described the third dream is the goodbye dream, and that's where you see your loved one. They're older, they're changed, and they tell you it's time to say goodbye. You need to go on your way. They need to go on their way. I had called Brian back. I was driving my car. He appeared on the road as a Christ figure, much older. And got in the back of my car and I was talking to him. I was so glad to see him. And he started to lose his human form, turn into a cloud that was obviously cramped by my car, which was, my life. It was too small for him. And I realized, that I was holding him back and confining him. And I apologized. I stopped the car. He got out and just disappeared. So, I've had that moment, and every time I've reunited with him in a dream state, that was always part of the message. There was another one at the Monroe Institute, and I tried to bring him back, and I created a beautiful garden, and I called him all the things he loved, hummingbirds, and he came back and like as kind of an angel. And I was so glad to see him, and I threw my arms around him, and he turned into a stone statue. And then the light left him and went up into the void. And I realized I couldn't bring him back. I realized I couldn't make it happen. And then I just became so tired, I just floated up out of the garden into the void. And there was a big stone vortex circulating, shining by a great white light. And I talk about that in the book, but I really only gave that the moment I'm about to get to one sentence, which was really probably one of the most life-changing things that ever happened to me. So I was so tired. I'd used all my energy. I couldn't make it work. So I settled into this big stone vortex spinning in space. And all of a sudden, I felt a presence next to me, and it was a chipmunk, Brian's favorite animal. His headstone has got chipmunks on it. And last time I talked to somebody in India, a chipmunk showed up right outside my door. First time in my 45 years, and just stopped there and looked at me. So this chipmunk, and I realized it was Brian, not as I wanted him to be, but as he was, as a sweet, loving little character, a little creature. And he looked in my eyes, and I felt this incredible love. Everything turned white, and I got melted down. My ego got melted down. My selfishness got melted down. And after that, I became a lot more paranormal stuff happened after that. I only gave that a sentence, but actually that was probably one of the big life changing moments, you know. So yeah, I mean, Brian's there, and for anybody who wants to, who wants to say hello, um, but he's not just Brian. So
Absolutely. What is it that you seek for yourself now, Dr. Gregg? What is it that you want to achieve or do or finish that so-called unfinished task? What is it that you look for in your life?
yes, I'm getting old. So I would like I would like to help other people like learn and uh, and then I think I would like to just move on, be in peace, no longer be in drama. Kind of feel like I can be the audience instead of the actor. So, but a little bit more work to do before then.
Absolutely, absolutely. There is so much to learn from you, uh, Dr. Gregg, and I'm sure a lot of people who want to learn your story through you, through your books, learn for themselves for all the lessons that is in there. What is the best way for them to do so?
You can go to the website www.beyondreason.info, info, and that'll get you. There's a lot of story, like other parents. When we shared Brian's story, had similar stories. It's very common that the child before they die will know it. So there's some more stuff on there. Children's drawings, like Stephanie, a little 4-year-old who told her mom she never wanted to grow up like be like the other kids, and she was extremely gifted. So she died on a slide with a ribbon caught around her neck. There's a picture of her she drew 20 minutes before she died, of her in dark colors being hanging from the neck, and another picture of her in light colors putting on a halo with an angel dropping halos down. Um, People have written songs about the story. That's all on the website. And of course, you can go to Amazon, Beyond Reason. But the website, beyondreason.info, you can go there to the book and read other people, the reviews that other people have found it helpful, which is, of course, wonderful.
Absolutely, absolutely. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you, AJ. Enjoyed it.